Welcome back. This time we're continuing our discussion over regarding Python programming. But for this session, we want to focus on flow control. And what flow control means is that we might want to repeat certain statement in our program multiple times. We might want to have a condition where sometimes we do an instruction, sometimes we don't do an instruction. So, the tools available to us, there's three of these. One is called a for loop, and we'll get into kind of what it does. And it's really good at iterating through a list or going from one number to another number and repeating the same thing by incrementing the number every time it goes through it. So those are some of the good things available to it. The while loop is the more general form of a loop, which you say, go ahead and execute this loop as long as this particular condition is true or true, and then it will execute the code as long as the condition is true. If then else is the last construct we're going to use, or we're going to introduce actually, is that it's a really good tool in that it allows us to decide whether we execute a statement in the code, in the script, or we jump over it and we'll now skip it, okay? So that's kind of would be useful if you're trying to make a decision and do if a number is larger than something, do something else, or whatever else we need to make a decision on. The if then else is a very useful tool. By no means these are all the constructs available in Python that you could use to jump over certain code or do them more than once or make decisions on. But these are, I would say, are the core three constructs available for you to control what code gets executed when. Okay, so that's this is generally called flow control, and that's the focus of this video. Let's go ahead and jump right into our Python shell. So the Python shell here, I have it looked like leftover from some other stuff I was doing. And then I created a file, just a simple script file. And remember how we do that file, new file. And I just typed in a few things. Always a good idea to have a little comments at the very top where you indicate what this program is all about. This program, this script, we are using to explore different ideas, starting with the for loop, okay? So why do we need for loop? Well, how about if somebody told me to print 1,000 or 100 units, labels, so they can print it, so they can use the labels. Yes, I can sit here for 1,000 times, copy and change number, copy and change number like I've done, and that will work. So if I save this and I say, okay, F5, which is run, right? Run module, which I could also click F5. It runs it, and sure enough, it gives me the 3 unit. And yes, I could sit here and do it 100 times, but there's a better way to do that. And the better way, and also there's other flexibility, and we're going to talk about it. The better way would be, let's say if I want 100 times, or let's not do 100 times, let's say do 10 of these things. I basically can use the for construct, say for, pick a number, let's just select for count in the range of, let's say 1 to 10. So what it does, basically, 1 should be comma, sorry, and it's telling me I'm doing. So I could do range, start point, you see here, start, comma, whatever I want to do, stop. Now stop is in the steps. So I could do step by 1, or I can do step by whatever I want. So I can, right now I'm doing, if I leave it alone, it's going to be by 1, or if I want to force it, I can force it to a 1. It's up to you. Or I don't want to force it to a 2 because I really want to do it in 1. But you can force it to whatever number you want it to be. And then what it does, basically, anything that is indented, notice in other programming languages, they have curly bracket, begin and end, and all of those kind of constructs. And here, if you indent it by a tab, then it knows that everything that is indented should be executed as part of for loop. So for example, in order for me to print the labels, I could just simply say print, and then I can say unit number space, one of these, comma, and say, okay, put the count in here. So what it will do basically, as we know before, it allows me to go through the loop, okay? And do first time through the loop, count will be 1, so it will be unit number 1. Second time through the loop would be count equal to 2, so it prints 2. Third one, 3, 4, 5. When it reaches 10, it'll stop. Okay. So let's see what else. So and we can kind of let ourselves know here end of the program. So we know we've ended, and we can do some fancier things, but we'll kind of hold off of those stuff till we get to more discussion. So now what I've got a simple print for count in the range 1 to 10. I can change the range to whatever I want. And then let's go ahead and put something at the beginning of this too. So we know when the program starts. So print start of the program, okay? And now this is a good character to remember. This /n basically says create a new line. So after it prints it, you do a new line, it goes to the next line for the next set of printing. And that makes it for a little bit of a cleaner things. And I'm going to run this for once, and then we'll come back and fix it so you can kind of see what happens. So let's go ahead and save it. Control S will save it. So pretty soon I'm going to start using soft keys so we don't have to do the menus anymore. Okay, so it's with valid syntax. Oh, by the way, when you're finished, when you want to say, you have to put a colon. That's what I forgot to put in there. So if you go back and look at the way the construct is, if you, since we're working on four, zoom it in. For whatever item is, in my case was count in, and this is a range I used. You can you can put a string in there and have go through every character in the string or do other things if you want to do it. But for now, we are saying range in here instead of the iterator, we're saying range, and in the range, we're putting the values we want to execute. Okay, and then the code in the loop is right here, and it could be many lines. You can have as many lines. You can have another for inside the for and things like that. But for now, let's stay with the kind of a simpler approach of just one for loop. So I have this thing set up now, and I'm ready to go. So let's go back to my program. My program was there, and notice when the error occurred, it told me roughly where the error was. The error wasn't really on this line; it made it red, but because I had forgotten to put this colon here. So the construct is you put the for keyword, then whatever variable you want in the range you want from where to where. And if you want to step by one, you do step by one. And if you eliminate it, it will assume you want it by step one, which is fine. And then what we could do is go ahead and say, all right, let's go ahead and run it. Remember, F5 would run it. Okay, sure, go ahead and save it. Okay, still doesn't like it, so I must have something else wrong in this process. So let's go ahead and see. So let's see what else. So there might be a need for a space here, and I might have to put this range next to. So spaces are important. That's another thing to pay attention to. So when you do a for, you got to put a space, then the variable name, which is in our case is a count, space in, space range, and then when you put the bracket, you cannot have spaces there. So these are all kind of important things to remember. And I should probably get rid, although that's probably not an issue. I'll go ahead and clean this up too, so there's not a space there as well. Although that those should not be an issue. So let's go ahead and see what happens. All right, so let's go ahead and save it. Control S will save it, and then F5 will run it. It still doesn't have it, doesn't like it. So now I am at, oh, okay, so that's I'm glad these are happening so you guys can see all the stuff. The problem is really not with this line at all. The problem had to be with this because I'd forgotten to put the closing parentheses, or maybe deleted it when I was typing on this one. So now you have print start of the program, for count in range, print, it's all good. So let's go ahead and try it again. Control S saves it. Let's see if we have any other problem that pops up. And then F5, we run it. Finally ran. And you can see, started the program here, the first print, and then the new line I put in here, notice there's an extra line that comes from the /n I put at the end of this thing. This /n is, I'm adding an extra line there. If I want another line here, I could potentially put a new line in here to add another line in here. So let's go back and do that so you can kind of see that. So Control S to save it, F5 to run it. And notice the difference. So because I added that line, make the screen a little, window a little bit smaller so you can see the whole thing. Now you see I have a space here because before it runs this line, it does a new line. The /n is a new line. It's you can even get fancier. For example, you can add a /t in here, and what it does, it tabs that line when it prints. So let's do it again. Control S, F5. Let's see what it did. It added a tab line. For every line, added a little space here when it printed it. Those are kind of cleanliness things you could do. So couple of things. The spaces are actually, come to think of it, spaces when I said it was that, it's really not that important. It just was, my error had to do with this. And it's very common when you start kind of looking at things that don't look right. But generally, this is a nice format to have when you have a function. Make sure your parenthesis is right next to the function when it starts. The same for the range. And then maybe a space for the colon, just a nice formatting. I think it'll not give you an error if I get rid of them, but it's nice to have them there. So this is a 4 count in the range of that printed, and we're all good to go. Okay. So that's great. Now, because I have a for loop, if I had I had done printf 10 times, this would be, that's the program and I'm done. But I can get a little fancy here. Remember last time we had this other function we called it, what did we call it? We called it input. So I can have a limit, some variable called limit, and I can ask my user to tell me how many of these do you want me to print. So I can ask him, I can ask the user using that input function and say, how many labels, okay? Now I'm gonna intentionally, like I've been doing so far, and intentionally potentially see a problem here, and we're gonna come back and fix it, and that's an important concept for us to know. So if I do this thing, I'll do an input, how many labels, and say, okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So Control S, Control F5. And how many labels? And I say, well, actually, so let's say I want 4 labels. So I said 4. Oh, nothing changed. Why is that? Okay, all right. We go back here and say, yeah, I made it limit, but I didn't never use the limit. So fine, you did this big deal. So let's go ahead and put the limit in here, okay? Now, it's really important to be careful because input only returns a string. So if you want to make it an integer, then you got to say int. And int, this is called a conversion. You'll take in the string that is coming in, and converting it to an int because the range expects you to give him int because it was to count. So I say limit is an integer, whatever the user entered, it turns into an integer and puts it in there, and then I'm going to use it as a limit. So let's see what happens. Again, Control S to save it, F5 to run it. So I'll say I want 4 of it. And oops, so it printed 3. Why is that? Let's go back and take a look at that. So we didn't count the 10, probably 10 was 9, because what happens, it does 1, 2, 3. Oh, it prints 1 less because 4 fails the test and it won't print it. So if you want to fix it, I believe you can do this. That's one way of fixing it. It said when the user wants 4, make sure you go past that. So what we're going to do is now we can run it. Oh, did I say it? No. Control S, F5. We want 4 of them. And notice last time when it was 10, we only printed 9 as well. We didn't. Oh, okay. We got a bit of a problem. It says that invalid literal for int foot base 10 for unit number line 7. So line 7, it does not like something we have created. And the question is why. So let's go find out why it doesn't like it. So we've got the input coming in. It's an integer. We put it in here. I think the only thing we changed was this. So let's go ahead and see if that would fix it. This way we're kind of learning how to debug this thing as well. So we're going to go back to where it was working. So Control S, run. Okay, it looked like it works. So it probably, my guess is it doesn't like us to do this. So so maybe I'll fix it a different way. So obviously say limit. So range probably was just one variable in there. It doesn't want you to do operations in there, which is fine. So we say limit equal to limit plus 1. So we do the calculation before, and then we come in. So let's see if that would fix the problem. So we'll do a save. And then we run it, and we want 4, and there it is. Finally got it. So as you go through it, you will also starting program. You're going to have all one of the reasons I want to make sure you see all these errors is because when you're going to write your own code for the first time, you are probably likely to see some of the errors I'm showing here as well. So you want to know how to overcome them. Okay, so that's great. So that's now we have 4 loops. We know how to go through it. Now, so what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and save this one. We're going to save this code, and we're going to save it and call it, let's say, for loop. Okay, that's fine. So we'll save the for loop, and then let's go ahead and rewrite this one using a different construct. There's a more general loop available to us, which is called the while loop. And I would like for us to learn how to use that as well, because sometimes you just don't want to count through this. You want to do stuff until certain conditions are right. And I'm going to use the same example for that as well. So the other one is called while. Okay. So I just saved it. Now I have 2 copies, 1 copy for for loop, 1 copy for the while loop. So I've got this here, and this one I'm explicitly exploring while loop in Python. So let's go back and kind of look at kind of the general form of while loop, and then we'll come back and work on the specifics here. So a while loop has a condition. So probably uses one of those relational conditions we had. If you recall, we had these conditional relational operators such as A less than or equal to B, A is equal to B, A is not equal to B, A is larger than B, larger or equal to B, all of those conditions we talked about in the last video. You probably could use those conditions in here to figure out when the code gets executed, okay? So let's go ahead and go back to our code. Where was that? Here. And by the way, I only have one item in here. We probably want to, you can have more than one item. You can have as many statements as you want in here, okay? You don't have to limit yourself to just one. You can have 10, 20, 100,000, whatever you want. And here, maybe for the while loop, I'll do that. We'll think of something else to put in here. So let's see what we are doing here. So let's go ahead and have the limit come in anyway. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use while loop. So if I use a while, I have to use a while. Oops, while. And then I have to have a condition in the loop. And then I got to do some stuff. I don't no longer need this. And by the way, you still need the colon to indicate that you're ready to, what comes next is the instruction that's inside the loop, and the indentation say what is inside the loop. And see, notice this print in the end of the program is not indented, therefore it's not part of the loop. So in this, whatever this, if I do this, if I basically say 1 in here or true in here, let's say if I say true in here, this thing will execute forever. If I say false in here, it will execute never, okay? But neither one of those are very interesting to me. How about if I do this? Say, okay, I want to count. I'm going to create a variable called count. I'm going to have my count start at 1. Okay, probably should start. Sorry, so equal to 1. And then what I'm going to, so these are, so I'm going to start getting a little more careful with my, so these are initializing, initializing variables. I'm setting the count to 1. I'm asking the user to tell me how many labels that they need. And I'm going to correct my label spelling. The computer could care less. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do a while. The thing is, I'm going to say, okay, as long as the count is less than 5, because I want to write 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I say as long as less than, or well, actually, I'm sorry, less than limit. Oh, and then one other thing we need to do. Remember, if I say less than limit, the user says you want 4, I want 5. So what we have to do in here, maybe say limit is equal to limit plus 1, because we need one more in order to make it work. So we say while count is less than limit, go ahead and print the stuff. But the thing is here, you do not have somebody automatically incrementing your count. In the for loop, it iterated through. It says first time through do 1, second time through do 2, third time do 3. In this case, you don't have that, so you have to do it yourself. So you got to basically say count is equal to count plus 1. Okay. So, and notice after since both of these are indented, both of them are going to be executed every time the loop runs. And then since this print is not inside, it's indented, it's not going to get done. So you start with this instruction, you do these instructions, get into the loop, and keeps repeating it. So let's run this example. Let's save it, Control S, F5, and let's do 3. And there it is, 1, unit number 1, unit number 2, unit number 3. And when it became 4, it stops because 4, the count 4 is less than what we had here. So that's done. Okay, I'm sorry, the last time through the loop, when the third one, yeah, 4 is less than, the count would be 5 less than 4 and stop. Because your limit was 3, we added 1 to it, became 4, then count has to be less than 4, and when it hit 4, it stopped. The other way we could solve this problem, if you don't want to do this, you can get rid of this. And instead of saying the count has to be less than the limit, you can say count can be equal. to the limit, okay? And does the same thing. So it operates based when it's less than or equal, and that's another way we could get around making sure the right number of things operate. So Control S, 5, and there you have it, okay? All right, so those are some good things. We've kind of gone through this. So that was good. So if you want to do loop and repeat things many times, this is one way you could do either using the while loop or the for loop. Both are equally good for what you do. For loop is a little bit easier if you are just trying to count through things. Then for loop makes a lot more sense. But if you are trying to test for a condition and do stuff until the condition becomes false, then while loop would be a better one. In general, while loop is a more general form, but for is a more specific one, and sometimes easier. There's one less thing. You didn't have to increment the count when you did the for loop. Okay, enough said. The last item we want to cover in this video has to do with the if then else. And if then else is it's a nice little item, very important to everything we do, because it allows us to do a condition. Okay, so let's say I want to print. Okay, so let me save this under if then else, so we have it, so we don't destroy. So let's call this one if dash else. You want to see a message. Okay, so that's the only question we're asking the user. Do you want to see a message? Because I didn't want to mix the for loop and all that just at the first stage. We can come back and make it more complicated later. So that's, and we'll call this one, instead of a limit, we'll call it answer. So the answer is going to be, and let's give the user a guide as well. So let's say answer, do you want a thing? And let's go ahead and say either is yes or no, because then I type, I don't want a message, and that won't work for us. So say, okay, the answer is yes or no. And then what I could do is here say if, okay, and we're going to go look at the syntax just to make sure I got it right. So when we do an if then else, you if the condition colon write this else colon, okay. So I can say if the answer came back and the answer is equal yes, okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to print I'm happy to print this message for you. So if the user says, go ahead and print me a message, and remember, I'm going to add a new line just to make it look nice. Maybe not. So that's it. I print that, and then I'm going to just basically say else, and I want to backtrack the else, I think. So let's go look at the syntax just to make sure. Yep, else is all right here. And remember, I forgot to put the colons there too. So let's go back and add that as well. So let's go ahead. Oops. Yeah, that was the right place. So we go here. There was a colon I needed to put in here, and else. So if that is not true, if answer is not yes, then what I'm going to come here and do is print something else, some other message. I am sorry that you do not want to see our message. Okay, so what we did basically says the user is going to see one of those messages depending on what the user answers to us. And this if then else allows us to, and by the way, I'm testing the condition of this you could do it, and we'll go back and get a little fancy in a minute, maybe with some other problem we have to work on. So here we are. So we're going to run this. Let's go ahead and run it. So let's save it. Control S saves it. F5 runs it. All right. Say, yeah, let's go ahead and print them. Let's see. Yeah, I agree. I said, I'm happy to print the message for you. Now, if I go back and run this program again, if I go back here and type F5 again, it says, and this time I'm going to tell him no. Poof, I am sorry that you don't want our message. And you see what happens? I could do all kinds of stuff. So I can come in here and says, in here I can say, I can ask, well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and here and ask some other question from the user. Say, and we're gonna, so, so we can ask him, what's your favorite number? Or whatever, I'm just making things up as we go. And then, you know, we can say print print whatever the answer was and say it is a great choice. So what I'm trying to get at is that as long as you intended and indent this statement, they're all going to show up under if, and then you could do the same thing for this one as well. So you can come here and be inquisitive and just say on the answer side, say, why not? And you might even start seeing sometime when you talk to a support staff, you feel like somebody wrote a simple program like this when they're talking to you, the robot is talking to you and asking silly questions, which is non-relevant because they just made, you know, they didn't spend enough time thinking about it. So that's or you can be nice and say, so if whatever they tell you, say, I understand. Okay, so what's going to happen is when I run this, whatever the user answers, I will have a little bit of a dialogue with them. And what I'm using is if then else to kind of guide my conversation based on whether something is true or not true. And remember, I only use the equal sign. These can use less than, larger than, less than or equal, larger than or equal, not equal. All of those are available to us to use. So let's go ahead and try this and see if we can get this thing running. So Control S will save it, F5 will run it. Let's say yes first. So we say yes. What's your phone favorite number? I don't know, 4, 5. 5 is a great choice in the program. And you can do the same program, can you run it and I cannot answer the opposite answers. I'm sorry you didn't want to see our message. Why not? Not sure. And by the way, you notice that there are some keywords that pop up and get corrected. It's not smart enough to know this was a response to a question and it was not a command. Remember, not is an operator as well. Anyway, so that was quite a bit. This is probably the most important part of what we're going to work on. And there are a number of really good questions in the homework that you should work on, which takes advantage of what we've talked about here to kind of make sure that this information is cemented in your mind as you go forward. So let's take a look at some of the homework problems and see which one you could do for this. So let's see, you've done 1 and 2. So write a program that user enters a password. So you can ask a user to put in a new password. and then you can compare it to Penguin. If it's the same, hey, it's look like a if then else, right? That look like an if-then-else instruction. So if it's true, you print access granted. If not, you're going to say access is denied. So if it's equal to Penguin, yep. If it's not equal to Penguin, no. Problem 4 looked like a really good one as well. And there's that 99 bottle, you know, it goes from 99 bottle, 98 bottle, all the way to, I don't know where it goes, to 1 bottle, okay? So you could sit down and write that one at a time, or you can have a for loop that goes in the range of 99, comma, 1, and kind of let it run through for you and do that. So if you want to see the whole thing, you can go here. And it gives you a hint. It says you should be able to do this to about 7 lines of code. So you should not have to write a whole mess of things. By the way, one other thing, when you do these programs, there are 2 things you need to, one thing you need to make sure, the expectation is that you write the code in idle and you copy and paste it into the document that is asked, your homework solution page that you're going to upload. We don't want a handwriting. It's got to be in an idle form if you do it. And then this one says, write a program, all odd numbers from a range. So remember this hint for this one would be, there is an operator called modules, a percent, that allows you to do that. Write a function that takes a degree number and then prints it out in Fahrenheit. The equation is right here for you to do that. Okay, so ask a word from user using input and convert it to binary or hex. So let's leave this one for now. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. So if you doing the first 3 from 3 to 6, I think it's going to be a really good exercise to practice your for loop, your while loop, your if then else, and kind of get those under your belt. That brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. This was a bit longer than normal.